Hey everyone, my name is Chris from Create Daily, and today I welcome you to part 3 of 3 in this mini-series of how you can animate archived images using Adobe Photoshop and After Effects. In this tutorial, we are going to take an image of a car, animate it, and add some secret sauce to make this edit pop. Buckle up because I'm bringing all the sauce to this edit. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to watch parts 1 and 2 linked in the description below. Now let's get started. So we're in Photoshop here, and I separated the car out into different pieces. If you want to know how to do that, I will link a video in the description below so you can learn how to do that in Photoshop. So we have our original photo here, and what I wanted to do at first was just crop out the car entirely. So that's what I did. But I also realized once I did this that, hey, I want to take these wheels right here and animate those. And I can't do that without separating those out. And I ran into the issue that if I were to animate these wheels, it would look really weird because part of the other wheel on the other side of the car would be showing and some ground and whatnot. So that looks really odd to me. So then what I decided to do is, rather than mask out the car entirely, I just masked out the car body. And then I masked out the front wheel and I duplicated that and I brought it to the back and made it the back wheel. So that's the background of how I separated this out and how I pieced this all together. Let's jump into After Effects and let's start animating. The first thing we're gonna do is bring in our parade working, which is just our background. We'll scale it down to see what we're looking at here. This is just a parade. And then we're going to bring in our working car composition right here. And then what I'm going to do is actually start working on the car, and then we'll go to the parade next. So I'm just gonna click in here. I'm just gonna delete my original photo and my car cutout. We don't need either of those things. I'm actually going to get rid of my back wheel too. And we will work with the front wheel, and then everything we do to the front wheel, we will duplicate it and then just move it to the back wheel, and it'll make things simple. The first thing I want to do is get the tires rotating. So with our front wheel here, I need to move the anchor point. And the reason for that is if I try rotating it now, it's all going to rotate around this center point of the composition, which we don't want. So I'm going to click on Y, and I'm going to take my anchor point tool, and I'm going to center this up the best I can to the center of this wheel. Perfect. Now when I rotate it, it'll actually rotate where it's supposed to. Now what I want to do is set a keyframe at 0 and go to about 4 seconds here. And then what I will do is actually animate this out by -1 rotation. And now the wheel is moving forward. If I wanted to reverse the car, I would just use a positive number, but this is why I'm using a negative number, is because the direction we're going is forward with the car. So now that we have this, we see a little bit of a gap between the actual wheel and the car itself. And your first thought might be, hey, let's scale this wheel or let's boost up the position. But I like the size of it and I don't want to move the position because it just looks the way it should be. Now what I'm gonna do is actually bridge the gap between the wheel and the car body itself. So there are 2 ways to do this, and I'm gonna show you both. The first one is to take the pen tool, go in here and create a shape that is a similar color to the actual dark gray that we have. Like that, put it behind the front wheel, and then when we go far out, we see how this looks. And honestly, this looks pretty good, and this is definitely the easiest way to go about it, but if you're a perfectionist like me, you might be a little bit bothered that there's like that perfectly colored shape layer and then we have this old grainy archived image. I'm going to show you guys a second way to doing this that's going to make it look just a little bit better. So we're going to delete our shape layer here, and what I will do is actually duplicate our car body cutout, and I'm going to hide our first one, and I'm going to mask out. Now I'm going to move the position with my arrow keys and just move this down. And I'm just looking up here, seeing, okay, where can I continue to make adjustments? Can I feather this out a little bit? You have to play with the parameters a little bit. This is gonna vary depending on the photos that you're working with. Boom. So I'm gonna take this cutout and I'm gonna call this wheel front wheel cover. And then I'm going to bring it behind the car body and actually the front wheel too. So when we look at it now, we have our new wheel cover and it looks a lot better already like this. So this is something that I plan on keeping. Now we have a little bit of a gap here. So what I'm going to do is just adjust my mask a little bit more. That's really easy to do. Now that we have this here, we're going to duplicate the process for the back wheel. And to make it easy for us, I'm going to duplicate our front wheel. I'm going to label this back wheel. And I'm going to bring it across here to the backside. Real easy, just like that. So now we have two wheels connected to the car. Now I don't like that these are the exact same wheel rotating the exact same way at the exact same angle. So I'm just going to make some slight adjustments here to this back wheel, and I'm just going to bring it up like right there. This way it looks slightly different. What I want to do from here is ease both of these. So when the car stops later on, it'll actually come to a slow stop rather than an abrupt stop. And I need to add a wheel cover for this back wheel. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is increase the size of my composition, just because I'm gonna be adding some effects later, and having a smaller comp can actually create some fine edges on there, and we don't want that. So I'm just gonna increase the size of this here. All right, now I'm going to make both of these 3D layers. I'm going to add a camera, and then I'm going to put these back into Z space. So for the car, I'll put this in at, say, 5,000. For our background, we will do 10,000. I'm going to scale this parade up, and then I'm going to bring it up with my arrow keys here. Nice, this looks good. Cool. With our car, I'm gonna scale this up as well. And now what I need to do is adjust the position. And I'm going to animate this because right now it's just standing still and it looks cool, but we need to animate this. So I need to set a position keyframe here and then go to 4 seconds and set a position keyframe here. I'm going to bring this out there. And I'm going to easy ease these. And we'll take a look at what we have so far. Now this is really starting to come to life, but I want to stylize our car a little bit when it stops to just make it stand out a little bit more. So now I'm going to hide our parade shot, and I'm just going to focus on the car. What I'm going to do is duplicate our car. We'll focus on this one, and I'm going to add a fill. And then with this fill, I'm going to make it white. And then I'm going to add a simple choker. So the cool thing about the simple choker effect is that you can actually expand or contract the edges of layers that you're working with. So I'm gonna just label this simple choker so we know what it is. Put this behind our car. And now when I bring this back, you start to see the effect come to life. This is looking pretty cool. So I'm going to set a keyframe here and then go about, let's say a full second. Set another keyframe, go to 0, function F9. So this is looking pretty cool so far. Things are starting to come together and look really good. As cool as that is, I want to show you guys another fun way to stylize this car with a similar looking effect, but that adds just a little bit more flair. So I'm going to hide this simple choker effect. I'm going to duplicate our car and I'm going to label this Saber. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go click on the layer, go to layer, auto trace, and click select. That worked really fast. So auto trace basically traces different parts of your photo or video if it's like rotoscoped or something like that, and it'll create a mask, and it's really cool how that works. So we have all of our different masks here, and I only want to focus on the entire outside of the car itself. So I'm going to keep this first mask, and then all of these other masks I'm just going to delete. So we have this first mask here. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what is Saber? It's a free plugin made by Video Copilot. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. So I'm going to add Saber here. The first thing you see is this plain lightsaber looking thing. We need to change the customized core to layer masks. And right away, we see the magic start to come to life a little bit. So I want to hide this right here. And then now what we need to do is actually change the blend mode to screen. Perfect. So now that we can actually see what we're working on, this is starting to look really cool. So there's a lot of different ways you could play around with Saber. I'm just going to stick with the default and I'm going to make this white. now what I want to do is actually animate our saber as soon as this car stops. I want to go right here to the 4-second and animate it in. So in order to do that, I need to go to our offsets here. So we have a start offset, and it's like a trim path. If you used trim paths before, there's actually like a line that fills around the entire mask. There's a start offset and an end offset. I'm going to set our end offset to 0, and I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go up a second, and then I'm going to make it 100. Awesome. And then what I'm going to do is go up a half second, set a start offset here, and go up a full second from there, and bring that up to 100. Click F9. I'm going to adjust these keyframes here just to smooth out this easing a little bit. So now we have our stroke animating on with the end offset, and then we're going to be animating it off with our start offset. So this is just, like I said, another cool little trick of the trade that I love to use sometimes. And you could either use this or the simple choker. It's really up to you. But I like to just provide options and let you decide for yourself. I should do 2 different ways. I'm going to stick with the simple choker, so I'm just going to delete the saber for now. All right, the next thing we're going to do is do a quick zoom in once our car stops animating in, and we're going to really highlight the actual car itself, which is going to look awesome. So I'm going to go to our 4-second mark because I know that's where the car ends. I'm going to click P for position, and then I'm going to go to, let's say, 5 seconds in, and I'm going to zoom. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is adjust these keyframes here, and just basically what I'm doing with these handles in the graph editor is I'm having them start off really fast, and then I'm going to have them ramp down like that. And this looks really nice too, because at the same time our simple choker's on screen, so it's almost like growing with the camera as it's zooming in. If we wanted to, we could even offset these keyframes a little bit, so I could start the simple choker a little bit later. And that looks really nice too. If you're not familiar with offsetting your keyframes, if you don't do much, you should start doing it, because you'd be surprised to see how much better your work can look when you just offset a few keyframes. So I like the way this is looking right now. Now what we need to do is actually mess with our background a little bit. It looks nice, but I want to add a little bit more contrast here and just make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to jump into our parade folder, and I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to add something called a tritone effect. And what we're doing right now is stylizing our layer. So we have our highlights, midtones, and shadows that I am currently altering. So now we have our original, and we have this new looking one. And when we go into our render comp here, I can see, okay, our simple choker and our car actually stand out a little bit better too, just because there's more contrast. The originals were all black and white, and now it looks a little bit better. I'm going to add an adjustment layer here, and I'm just going to call this levels. I'm going to make a few more adjustments. So now we've added a bit of contrast between our background and our car, but I want to animate our background from being the original image to this new one. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So now what we're going to do is bring in our ink bleed. So ink bleeds are really fun assets to use. If you haven't used one before, I highly encourage you to find some online and download them, and you can have tons of fun with them. Basically what we're going to be doing is taking the information that's dark, and that's going to be revealing our new image. So we have our new background here, which is this one with this tritone effect, and our original black and white, and we're going to be transitioning to our tritone using this ink bleed. I'm going to scale our ink bleed up until it fills the entire frame. And I know that most of the frame is covered around 1.5 seconds, and I don't want to transition that early. So what I'm going to do is actually bring this up a little bit until about here. Okay, this is looking good. I'm going to split these layers. So we'll start with just the black and white here, and then it's going to be just black and white here as well. And then I'm going to track matte our tritone to our ink layer, and then I'm going to luma matte it. So if you don't see the luma matte option, just click on the alpha matte switch again, and you'll see the luma matte. And right here, it starts to actually show. This is looking good. Okay, now what we need to do is actually do a little bit of a rack focus. So we're gonna start focusing onto the background, and then we're going to rack focus our 3D camera onto our car layer. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do that using the 2 view. And we're gonna look at this from the top. I'm gonna zoom out a good bit, and we have our camera here. I'm going to go to camera options, and then I'm going to enable depth of field, and I'm going to take our focus distance here, and then I'm going to go to our 4-second mark where we want it to end, set our keyframes. So the first thing I want to do is find our background, so our parade, and our parade's way back there. So what I want to do is animate our focus distance all the way back there, and you see on the right side of the screen I'm just moving this bar up. It's going really far. And I want to get precise with it, so I'm going to use my mouse wheel and just scroll in here, zoom in, see, okay, how accurate can I get with this? This looks good. Cool. Now, what we're going to do is bring this out to our second keyframe, and we're going to go to our car layer. So now when you look at the right side of our screen, we have our focus distance set on our background, and then it goes to our car, which is right here. But remember, we also animated the position of our camera, which goes in a little bit further. So I'm going to animate this focus distance one more time to make sure it stays on to the car. Like I said, this is really tedious stuff, but the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Nice, that looks good. I'm going to ease all of these keyframes. All right, so now that we've animated our focus distance, the next thing I'm going to do is actually bring up my aperture. And if you're familiar with shooting with cameras, usually you have a lower aperture number, but in After Effects, it's a little bit backwards. So I'm gonna bring this up to, let's just say 600, which is a pretty high aperture for After Effects. And as our car animates in, it's still a little bit blurry. We'll boost this up to 800. And then it's going to, the camera's rack focusing to the car, and then it's going to keep the car in focus since we animated that too. So now what we're gonna do is actually add exhaust to our car, and there's a few different ways to do it. There are a lot of tutorials out there on how to add exhaust to a car. I just pulled this stock asset here, the smoke, so I'm gonna be using this. So I'm gonna bring this in here. I'm going to make it 3D. I know my car is at 5,000, so I'm gonna put this back at 5,000 as well. I'm going to set the blend mode to screen, and then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, shrink it down, and I'm going to place it where I'd like it to go. So about right here. I will back this up just a little bit further. So it's behind the car. Okay, this is looking good. We have this little bit of an edge here. When you use a blending mode like screen, it wants to subtract all of the black, but smoke can have a lot of gray in it too. And I don't want this hard edge here. So I'm gonna just remove this by creating a mask like that. And then I'm going to feather this out by a good bit. Nice, that looks good. Now I'm going to parent. All right, and I'm also going to add motion blur. Now the last thing we're gonna do is add a call out. So I'm going to take my pen tool here, and I'm going to get rid of our fill and add a stroke. We'll make this 20 for now. I'll make this a nice bright yellow. Like that. I'm gonna go here. Just bring this up. Then I'm going to add some text here. Nice, this is looking good. All right, so now I'm going to parent our shape layer to our text layer here. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. So now we're going to animate this call out. So I'm going to go add trim path, and the timing of this, I want this to be like starting right around like the 5-second mark. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to animate this out from the middle. So in order to do that, I'm going to set 50% here for our start and our end. And then I'm going to set keyframes here. I'm going to go up a full second. And then I'm going to bring our start to 0 and our end to 100%. Highlight our keyframes, click F9. And then bring this in. Now what I need to do is actually make these 3D. And I'm bringing these in to our frame. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is animate our focus distance to our callout. And we know our callout finishes animating at 6 seconds. So we're going to go back to our 2 view. We are going to go look at this from the top. I still want to see the car a little bit better and this when we react to the words. So I'm actually going to animate the aperture. And if you know anything about shooting cameras, when you change the aperture, you actually change the amount of light you bring into the camera, but that's not the case in After Effects. So I'm going to bring this aperture down to like 300, and I will ease those as well. And then the last thing we need to do is actually alpha matte our text to our shape layer. And that way, when the shape layer animates on, it actually reveals the text at the same time. And this is how you animate a variety of archived images and adding fun effects using Adobe After Effects. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial in this mini series. Drop a comment and let me know what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching and stay creative.